What can be said about the definition of the word Enigma? Only that it is something difficult to describe, difficult to explain, and that it has a complicated significance, especially as we move to certain topics. In this episode, I am joined by another fellow immigrant who, after growing up in the Middle East, firsthand experiencing part of the Iraq conflict, and even having the chance to physically interact with U.S. service members, was eventually given the opportunity to travel to the United States, and with this opportunity has continued to pursue the American dream, both in education and in bettering himself. This is Abdullah. Welcome back to the ESL Sessions. This episode in particular, we'll be talking about a very specific region of the world. And my guest is a very special guest because of his experience both coming to the United States, also being an ESL student, and a lot of his experience has been with the educational system. And a lot of what he has in experience-wise is very unique to the current generation. We are 10 years apart, and there is a lot to be said about the thought process of a decade of separation. But the rest of the conversation will flow as normal. So I'll go ahead and I'll let my guest introduce himself and then go ahead and tell us a little bit of himself. So whenever you're ready.
Hello, everybody. My name is Abdullah Fadli, and I'm currently attending college, employed, and enjoy a variety of hobbies, such as motorcycles, mechanics, cars, any sport that contains physical aspects, and enjoy lifting heavy weights.
Yeah, that sounds about pretty common for the current generation, I want to say.
Agreed.
Yeah. So going with that, so you have you identified very specific hobbies. So definitely mechanics, engineering of sorts. Obviously, working out's a very big deal nowadays. And then also you said games, right?
Correct.
Got it. So let me ask you with that. Why did you pick those specific topics?
I'll go into each one of them specifically. For mechanics, honestly, since a young age, I've been very into tinkering with things like RC cars. Anything that had screws, I would take it apart and figure out how it works, what it did, and how to put it back together. That led into me messing with phones. It's just very fascinating to me to see things work, because you know many people work on that object. Cars, I have an older brother. He works on cars. He owns a whole dealership, multiple variants as well. And because of him, I was able to get into cars and modify them and enjoy the thrill of speed, I would say. And what was the last thing that working out? I have a younger brother. His name is Z. He got into working out, and as the older brother, my ego got hurt to see my younger brother get stronger. So I got into it, and now I do it for other reasons.
Okay. Do you feel like working out is a good confidence boost even after kind of like in the spirit of competition with your brother? Do you feel like working out is a good confidence boost for you?
Overall, working out should be done by everybody. I 100% advocate for it, that working out made life so much more enjoyable, from the energy aspect to the way you feel about yourself, and is a better time it's a better way of using your time other than wasting it on social media or other things that seems just like a time passer. So at least you're getting something done and working on yourself, killing two birds with one stone.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that's definitely a very interesting way to put it, and really, really direct, which is good. Which is good because you don't really hear or see too much of that kind of observation, especially within like I said, the past generation, within this last group of teenagers coming into adulthood. But before we step into that realm a little bit on the current time frame and all that stuff, why don't you tell me a little bit about your early life? Like I said in your introduction, you are not originally from the United States, like most of us. As the podcast implies, the ESL Sessions, we are secondary speakers of this language. But go ahead, tell us a little bit about your early life. Where are you originally from, and whatever you want to include in there.
Originally from the Middle East, a small country that's been known by Americans. Middle East, Iraq. That's the country I'm from. But as many people know, it's the country that had a war about a decade ago, and unfortunately, the stereotypes about people in the Middle East is not really that great. But I wouldn't get into that. I want to first say and talk about my early life, which I was very young. I was only there for my first 10 years of life. It wasn't as crazy as the media makes it. It's not a continuous slugfest of war, bombs, and explosions. Although it did happen, life for me was very enjoyable. I had a lovely father, a loving mother, and there was food on my table and a roof on my head. So it wasn't really many things that I would think of that was negative in my younger years. But it is definitely a pleasure to be in America as a citizen and not deal with the mischiefs that I had to deal with in my country. A few normal things that was power outages, things like that. It felt, when you say third world country and your limited knowledge about a country like that, it had all the checkpoints ticked off when you think of that type of country. I would say that's it.
Okay, and that's not a really bad explanation either. It's pretty straightforward, especially shying away from the consistent conflict, the whole, like you said, the whole entire stigma of how most of the Middle East has been pretty much martyred to an effect of like, that is the country that is the most region with the most danger out of these past quite literally 20 years of consistent conflict. And to say that your country of origin was not one of those that was affected would be incorrect, because I've interviewed previous service members that were probably there in combat, in conflict while you were still there. So, but let's touch a little bit on your growing up. So you said that's one of those things that a lot of people don't understand with the consistent power outages. Just like in India, just like in a lot of the Southeastern Asian countries, the Middle Eastern country does not have a consistent power grid. So it's a little bit more difficult to be able to maintain power energy at a consistent time. So with that, how were the resources distributed that you can remember? Because 10 years is still a lot. I mean, I left Mexico, I left Mexico when I was 6 years old, and I still remember a lot of the things. But you left literally 10 years ago. So with that, I'm pretty sure you remember a lot more.
I remember having multiple homes that we got to move from. I remember the first house we had was literally like 3 stories, but it was like it's like a very small square that just had multiple levels to it. Having my father be into very physical work, he built the house from the ground up, made sure it was to his specific needs and wants. And as a lovely dad of mine, he did everything by hand. And that's what I aspired to be. I recall going outside. It was a much more physical type of life, had the loving of soccer like by many other Middle Easterns. But I don't really recall doing too much. I just enjoyed going outside, talking to friends, playing soccer, and really, really enjoyed cycling. That seeing my neighborhood on a bike was something else. It was always a thrill to actually meet somebody my age on a bike and try to race, and those type of activities just stick in your head.
Okay. So you definitely feel like it was a little bit more of a simpler life. You definitely got to enjoy your childhood.
Agreed.
Okay. So sticking on that, how was your education there for those 10 years? How, starting from your kindergarten, I would guess, up until your last year of elementary school, I would guess. How was that? How does that differ from when you moved to the States and you started to have to learn English and all that?
Uh, not a very pleasant experience. Teachers don't seem like, even though I was between the age of 1 to 10, and like you would think that is a very young age. I do not have pleasant memories. Uh, the school system was overall just a shitty place. I remember, so I'll describe the building for you. It was a square building which had the classrooms on the outer layer, and having it being a square, the inside was like a recess spot where people can play, talk, and just enjoy their environment in an open spot. But I recall the classroom being dirty, desks were falling apart. The classroom had windows and the windows were broken. It's, as I describe it, it gets worse and worse. And I remember in the middle, when it rains, the middle area of the square would just get all green and dirty. I gotta recall that the restrooms were absolutely horrendous because it didn't have running water, and they're not similar to American restrooms. In Middle Eastern restrooms, it's a squat position type of bathroom, and being young, kids did not use that, and it was just a disgusting place. For teachers, I don't really recall the type of things I learned, but I remember being in an English class learning my ABCs, and for some reason, like, I was stuttering as a child. It wasn't very crazy, but I remember the teacher walking up to me, and my t-shirt was a little bit open. She like played with my shirt, like, "Oh, you can't say these letters? They're very basic letters." I recall, like, if there was a marker and a student would speak out, that marker will end up in that student's head. It does not matter. These teachers did not care. That's what I recall. And I had the privilege of knowing the principal because my father had connections. That did not matter. That just felt like a little extreme in all ways. Like, coming here, teachers are very kind, respecting to whoever it is. I'm glad. I'm just glad that it's over and done with.
No, I get that. I get that. I didn't have that exact same experience when I was still young, when the time that I was in kindergarten and stuff like that. But from what I was always able to discuss both with my older brother, my cousins, and everybody that went to school in Mexico or even other different parts of the world, that was always one of those weird things that the American institution, when it comes to education and the fostering of young minds, does not understand, is that a lot of the way that foreign countries, most places outside of the United States, are taught is a very rigid and strict and very hardcore, legitimately a kind of a hardcore type of schooling system where it was seen more similar to before the 60s, maybe within the 50s in the United States. And then slowly it started shifting into this mentoring and fostering, and some people call it coddling. Other people call it, can't even think of the word, but it's a lot more connecting rather than abusive. And not to say that there wasn't at any certain point between the 70s to 80s some sort of fine line that was crossed every so often, but even now to this day, if you were to go to any other place in the world, it's still the exact same type of education system. Very rigid, very strict, very hands-on discipline, very kind of hardcore when it comes to the way that punishment is dealt off to each student. And it's a good thing that you explained it like that, because most people have never heard, much less even understood what that whole system is like.
Going off of what you said, being here, it hurts to be in classrooms where students are disruptive. being just like a class clown. But there's times that I still remember first coming here. People are kind, but there's always that one student that makes the job of being a teacher horrible. And the longer I've been in classes, the longer I understand how difficult it is to be a teacher. But I like in my head, there's moments where I just remember seeing teachers cry because how difficult certain students make it. And it's not to shy away that students do have difficult lives, and then we never know their situation at homes, but that doesn't mean to go to the classroom, be disruptive, and making everything more difficult from students to the teacher. That's something that I would say just hurt. Nothing to me, but to see somebody else that's trying so hard to improve our lives, and they're just a teacher. To be hurt by students like my age is beyond me.
Yeah, no, and it's understandable because education in major parts of the world is still a privilege. It's not a given right, regardless of whether it's state controlled or even manipulated. Let's be honest, because that's a very hot topic when it comes to educational system right now with everything that's going on in the United States. But that's one thing that a lot of these parents and even a lot of the graduating children that you have seen, how you explained, is not very well understood. It's a privilege. It's been a privilege for a lot of people, for the wealthy outside of the United States. And even within the United States, that small little privilege, how you touched on the class clown, going on with the attention seeking to be able to, and it makes the teacher's life difficult, is the exact same situation. We don't know how a lot of these students live their life. We don't know what their home life is, if it's emotionally abusive, it's physically abusive, if it's any sort or type of neglect that we always pull on the heartstrings whenever we hear it in the media, in the news and stuff, but we don't understand it and we don't know it unless you've seen it by firsthand or you've experienced it by firsthand. So it's a very understandable and very, very clear way to put it. So, but let's moving a little bit forward. So your education in Iraq, in the Middle East, it's very rigid, very similar to a lot of places of the world. When your parents began the immigration process to come to the United States, how was that, navigating it from a foreign perspective?
I'm gonna try to go in as much detail as I can, but I can't really recall the things that I went through. I just remember my parents talking to me about not telling other people that we were moving, or even not moving, but leaving the country. It was already a crazy idea to move spots. And as a child, I had no idea. I just wanted to, know what was going on. I only remember seeing the military around the country, and that military was like very kind and loving, like most Americans are. But I had my father. He's an air conditioning man that helps and works on air conditioning. The American Army needed his help because he was local in the area. And that was the connection that made us come to the country. He worked with the American Army for so many years that they were like, yo, you're coming back with us. We'll give you this opportunity. And that's how me and my family were able to come to the country. I just know the embassy that was in the country, I had to go there, do a bunch of paperwork, get photos, make sure that my vaccines and all my paperwork is done. But other than that, the lovely part was taking the multiple airplanes as a kid over back to America.
No, that's crazy, because you don't really ever hear that. I wouldn't say you don't hear, at least even in just such little depth, of how that whole process is. But saying that a lot of what the military had in place to be able to sponsor your dad, just for helping him, but also being a trustworthy resource in the country, is what helped him and helped you and your families to be able to be brought to the States. That's something that you hear a lot of when talking with documentaries, when people start talking about documentaries, and then even bringing it to as most recent as possible, how they've been still trying to bring in a lot of interpreters contractors and a lot of people that worked with the United States military during the Afghanistan war, during the entire occupation, and even right now post the collapse. There's still a lot of organizations, there's still a lot of advocacy groups still trying to bring back all of these people, all of these helpful people that deserve that opportunity, that have deserved that opportunity. And you and your family have been one of the few fortunate ones within this 10-20 year span of what has been conflict in the Middle East. If I can touch on that real quick, were there any moments while the military was there, while the U.S. Army, U.S. Marines, whoever was essentially providing security posts in the country, did you ever experience any conflict in the 10 years, or were near any conflict where it was definitely a jarring experience?
Personally, no. I was born, or my young years, I came to life right after all the conflict that happened, from the war to Americans coming to the country and, making their own posts and stuff. I don't, but I know my father went through a story that I could recall. He and my older brother were in the car driving down the street as they come to a pit stop for the American Army. And I can't recall if it was the American Army that had the situation happen, or, a group similar to ISIS that was in the country. But he drove through the pit stop and instantly got looked at by the people there. And I can't recall if he was the one that was in the driver's seat, full on getting shot at. Let's just say I'm thankful that I left the country, and stuff like that was normal. I've had a few situations like car explode near my house. I wish it wasn't common, but that is the case. And I personally did not ever feel scared or in conflict by the American Army. I still have photos of me posing with them. It was always a surreal experience to see a Hummer or anything military wise. Even now when I'm on the highway driving, I'm like, oh my God, look, it's an enjoyable sick car that gives me some good memories.
Gotcha. So there was never, well, I can't say never. Most of your memories with the U.S. military being in country have been more positive than negative, at least by perspective.
For me, yes. But I don't think that is the case, even for probably my father. The people he worked with, he enjoyed. But as a person from Iraq, what I call is the horrible person, Mr. Osama, he was doing good for the country. And that's how he's viewed by the people in the country. He believes he was creating a lot of structure, bringing money to the country, making things better. But the conflict that caught him to get killed and all that, that's looked at as a negative thing by the people in the country. So, in any way, I feel like if you talk to somebody from my country, they're going to be like, oh, the Americans did this, this, and this and made it worse. I have not done any research and I have no idea what happened. I just know America came by and there was a war.
Got it. It's interesting that you say it like that too, because it kind of goes, and I'm going to probably misquote it, but it goes back to that same saying. It's actually, funnily enough, Che Guevara said it. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So it's really interesting to even see that from your perspective, with little experience and little knowledge to what you know, but what you can remember and what you were able to hear from around the public. That's always an interesting perspective that a lot of people, one, that have fought in the country, but also people that have never been in country, don't understand. Is kind of the exact same way, if I can put it, like El Chapo in Mexico, is that he did a lot of the same things that Osama bin Laden basically did, how you're saying, in Iraq. He brought a lot of stability, he brought a lot of money, and even though it was in a very violent and conflicting way, it was a stability that people knew, and it was a stability that people held on to up until the last moments of outside intervention. And that's one of the things that people from the outside don't understand, that when you're looking at it, when you start seeing outside intervention, is that you're not harming the person that you're taking out. You're harming the public. You're harming the entire infrastructure that's already been stood in place of the person who is basically upholding it, regardless of whether they're evil or not. It's interesting, man. That's really interesting. So moving it forward, though, moving a little bit forward. So you've already experienced a lot of this. Your education system in the country, obviously, somewhat dangerous situations before leaving the country, and then you and your family are able to receive this one in a however many chance opportunity to be able to come to the United States. How was it when you first arrived in the United States?
The agency that helped us come here, they located us in a parking, like an apartment complex that I would say was middle class to lower class. So the environment wasn't the greatest, but we made best of what we had. This agency brought in pretty much any immigrant they could help, and they put them in this area. So I was able to make friends from similar backgrounds and similar languages. I just know that if my father wasn't as hardworking as he was, we would have probably not moved. Because it's very difficult for a person in this country to get their all their eggs in one basket, like to make enough income to move out and have like a stable sitting is very difficult. So it was surreal, honestly. I think that my mom says when we got here, it was raining, and it rained and made the cars cleaner. That wasn't a thing. I don't recall it raining in my country, and if it did rain, it would turn everything into mud and dirt, and the cars would get dirtier because we lived in the desert.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it, especially if you've never lived in a desert community. Or even a majorly rural community. So, but yeah, no, you're right, dude. You're very right when it comes to the options and the opportunities. When you look back at it now as an adult, or even just moments of lapse, you start thinking it's a very surreal, because at one moment you're in a different part of the world. Everybody speaks the exact same language. Everybody pretty much looks the same, and then next thing you know, you're here. You're in the United States, and you see people, different colors, different creeds, different languages, and it's interesting how easily people meld in, and it's somewhat seen normal in a later time, but not at the moment. If I can make that observation.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was beyond surreal. Now that you're talking about it, there was just so many things that were different. Being, in my opinion, like still young, was about 11, 12. Going through all these changes was crazy. Going to school here and meeting all the different, from ages to my teacher to, the different cultures. I remember meeting the first gay person. It was not normal, like the different colors, skins, also real.
No, I mean, hey, dude, that's how you put it. That's how you put it. So this was when you arrived to the States, just so we can get a general timeline. What was the year when you arrived to the United States?
2013.
2013. So to put that into perspective from my point of view, in 2013, I was enlisting into the Navy. So at this point in time, I'm already considered an adult. At this point in time, you're coming into the States. You're about 11 years old, give or take, and you're experiencing this new entire, already fluctuating, changing time within the country, because new advancements in technology are already happening. The touchscreen has been essentially revitalized and then refined. Network communications, intercommunications, international communications are at a big span now. And along with that, the entire sharing of information, both from a legal and illegal perspective, let's be realistic, has grown to amass terabytes in minutes versus gigabytes in years almost. And this was, and I can tell you, this was literally from in 2010, before I graduated high school, to 2013 to 2013, that this entire influx happened. So out of that, within the technology spectrum and coming to the United States, what surprised you most about how technology was in the United States versus back in Iraq?
I recall having a PlayStation 2. Then back in Iraq, my older brother, similar to my father, he got into the military and was spending time with them. And because of that, he got to come to the country earlier. In my younger years in Iraq, he visited a few times. And each time he came over, I remember the first time he came back, he had a car full of toys. And they were all American toys, from football to soccer to, sports to, I remember Monopoly. He brought Monopoly home. In a country in Iraq, I do not recall any board games other than the basic chess. So that felt very foreign to me. Now going back to being in the country and new and all that, we had an Xbox 360 and we were enjoying that. And that's the thing that got me into games and video games. And then not even like a few years later, and we had the Xbox One come out, and that's something that got me into technology. That it was very surreal, from the basic things we had in my country to iPhones, laptops, computers. All those things seem so normal here.
Yeah. It really is. It's really crazy though, right? When you really start thinking about what's available before you come to the country versus what you're pretty much just having overabundance of once you're already in country. And with that, what are the things between, let's say I'm guessing you're already in 6th grade, give or take, 5th, 6th grade, around that time frame, all the way into high school. What other things stood out to you besides with the education system? Like you said earlier, you met your first gay person. You met your first person that identified as gay. You saw a lot of people with different colors, different locations, and in different parts of the world, not just the country. Because you came here to Virginia originally, correct?
Yeah.
And in Virginia, as for most of you that don't know it, it's actually a very large hub for the U.S. military, for all service branches. This is one of the largest locations and one of the largest places that has the most amount of bases for the military. What stood out to you about interacting with all these people?
I could recall I didn't start in 6th grade. I started in 5th grade, and though that was the first time spending time with other students my age, and other than when I came to the country, I did not have education, as I literally spoke no English. So going to a classroom would have felt super foreign to not even understand what the person is speaking. So the agency that brought us here brought our own ESL teacher that would teach us the language and slowly get us more familiar with how to speak, how to talk, how to do all that. They gave us the basics, and over time, from the internet to TV, you slowly pick up on the language. Being so young and having my mind so empty, it was easy to catch on to the language and learn it. So after all that was done and over with, I was put in 5th grade. Now that I think about it, now I am about a year behind. I should have been in 6th grade based on my age, but I'm a child. I have no idea what's what. Met those people, enjoyed it, and then I got to move again. I originally lived in one city in Virginia and then moved to one that's slightly of higher caliber in wealth. When I went to that school, it was Berkeley Middle School. People were more friendly. I don't know if it was based on the location or the status that people had, but people were open. Me being Middle Eastern, there was the common jokes of, oh, he's a bomber. Oh, he's a terrorist. Oh, and I wouldn't say I looked the best, smelled the best. It was not of that thing, of that status of, oh, I'm poor and I can't afford it. But I did not know how to take care of myself being so young. So all of these things added up to how people viewed me. But being in middle school, people were just overall kind. And then I moved back to the first city I lived in, to a middle school called Girls Leave. People were very closed off. The jokes came back harder and worse. And I don't believe I changed as a person, how I talk to others. But the environment that I was put in, with the people being so much more different, made it very difficult to be who I am without insecurities, fear, judgment of others. That made it just a very uncomfortable situation to be in. It was just uninviting. I don't know. The new middle school was filled with people that would fight. It's not very easy to describe. It was just felt like middle class, lower class type activity. You would feel, I don't know if this is right to say, but these people were troubled with something else other than, oh, I got homework to do. Oh, I just need to go to class and show up. It was more going on behind the scenes.
And you were able to observe all of this even at your young age.
I don't know if I would say that at my young age. I wasn't really a big fan of school back then. I would end up skipping stuff like that. But the longer I went in school, the more that this is how it felt. I knew the change between the two middle schools was very drastic. The people were just very different.
And that can definitely happen. That can definitely happen in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, especially when you move and it somewhat seems unstable at that young age too. It can definitely happen and bring up a lot of observations. A lot of observations that some people internalize and other people lash out in when it comes to things like that. And I think how you explained it best is actually very true. With the concern of everybody, that was involved in both the bullying, the teasing, and all that stuff, but also that hard, rigid outer exterior motive, or hard outer exterior and rigid demeanor. It was more of a hard, rigid demeanor, where how you explained it is the concern of outside of the education, outside of what is happening between the threshold of these four walls within the school and what's happening outside on the streets where I live, what they're experiencing in life. Very true. So you went to school. Obviously, it was a very challenging time. Let's be realistic about that. And especially with being from the Middle East, definitely understandable how that can affect you. And you said it definitely affected you in your self-esteem and in your confidence, correct? How has that changed now from when you started coming out and developing as a young adult to graduation, and then now as a 20-year-old man?
I think the thing, talking about switching schools, being in middle school, I wasn't the most popular. That was very simple, as I didn't believe I was that outgoing. I didn't have that much confidence. I didn't really feel that great about myself overall. And I recall that I was an annoying person as well. I would go out of my way to put people's hoods up that I knew. I didn't just mess with the people I didn't know. But the people that knew me, I wouldn't say had the greatest opinion of me. Not based on just personality, but the way I acted. It felt, now that I recall, felt like it was attention seeking more than attempting to make friends. It wasn't a great time. I'll say that. The longer I spent in middle school, the longer I spent in high school, I slowly but surely started developing my own interests, having my own values, thinking about things in different ways. I recall from then till now, I still try to chase after women. And back then, it was a very hard line where nobody would cross. And attempting to even speak to somebody that thought you were annoying would just not lead anywhere. Going from then till now, I do not value the opinion or the attention of others as I value my own time and views on how people interact around me. Talking about working out in the beginning, that was the major change in my recent years. Honestly, getting into fitness, feeling better about how I look, even if it had a little bit to do with how people felt about me. It's not what matters. Getting into fitness is how I view myself in the mirror and reflect about the person that I looked like and used to be to the person I am now and what I want to do in the future.
And with that, do you think your changes, your changes to try to not be the person that you were previously, they've helped you boost your confidence in how you see and you interact and you try to approach people?
The way I really live my life now, because the thing that I disliked about myself so much from then till now was that I lived by fear. Even though I would try to go out of my way to make friends, talk to people, and even though I believed I was very annoying as a person, now when I come across or meet somebody, I try to just be casual. And if they don't like me, I try to think about what the reason is. If it's a valid reason, then I try to work on myself. But if it's not a valid reason, then let that person enjoy their time. It's a public place, public time, and currently being in college, you're able to meet so many different type of people. If somebody does not like you, it's perfectly fine. You could walk away to talk to somebody else. That's just how it is. There is no need to value somebody's opinion over you. If it's something that you did wrong or negative, then it's important to see what you did and try to improve on that. But there's no such thing as somebody feels or opinion should change who you are for the worse. You should never let somebody that feels ill attention of you change you.
Very true. Very true. You and this is going to sound kind of corny, but you are wise beyond your years. But it also comes from that experience from being in a hostile environment in two different points in time. The opportunities that are given to you and are presented to you, not to squander them, but also your interaction with other people and how their behaviors shaped you in that. So you definitely, from the short time, and actually I can't even say short time because it's been about almost 3 years now that we've known each other, that entire time span, I've seen you expand and grow and become more of a confident person than when we initially started talking through mutual acquaintances. We'll put it like this for now. But your perspective is very, very clear, very direct, that I have yet to see with a lot of people that I've interacted that are in college. Because one, I don't go to physical college, but also my interaction with people younger than me is through the military. And it's a very completely different dynamic when you talk to somebody who's currently graduated, went to college, and is currently experiencing a lot of these liberties. And then you talk to somebody else who is literally graduated, decide, I'm going to join the military. And their entire experience is completely different because they haven't been able to experience all of these liberties. So I can say from your perspective and from my perspective that the dynamic is very a open and closed off, and a very open and observing kind of way when talking on both perspectives of going out into the educational system versus joining the military immediately. So with that, let's move it forward and pretty much finish off, because I think we've talked a pretty good portion about your life and things that have happened to you that are very unique to you and very unique to people from your region of the world. Now that you're in your 20s, you've already experienced a lot of what the United States has been able to both give you, and a lot of the backlash of what it means to be a person from the Middle East. What do you want to do from here on out? You're in college. I know we've had this conversation, but what are your goals out of your current post-education out of high school?
I'm currently in college, like he said, but I'm currently attempting to be a mechanical engineering technology major. I would like to continue this degree. It's a degree about designing and how things work, similar to what I did in my younger years, where it's about tinkering, taking things apart, figuring out what things work best with what materials. I would like to get my degree like any other college student, but I don't want to be in an office or just working under a company. That will be the starting point to have some experience and have some kind of information other than the basic. Here's education. I want experiences which is from the real world, where I could actually be ready to start and venture on my own. I would like to own my own company and start off something simple. Like all things in the world, you have to find a problem and find a solution for this problem if you want to make a profit. And by that, I want to have my own company, find some very simple problems that need solutions. And then once I find that solution, I would like to sell that to whoever that wants to buy it. That's the way I want to make my own venture and not work under somebody and just have a 9 to 5. Like people, if they're comfortable with that, that is perfectly fine. But after seeing my father work so hard under other people and freelancing for his job, I would rather really prefer working under myself. Whether if it succeeds or fails, I want to try.
And that's a very admirable goal, and that's you're on your way to that. Like I said, from how long we've been friends, how long we've been knowing each other, you're definitely very on the right track. Well, I think this is a good spot to close it off. What do you think?
I agree. I just hope that I shared what I wanted to share in a concise and entertaining way.
No, it's definitely understandable. Like I said, that's been the main goal of the ESL sessions, especially the Enigma segment, to be able to give everybody that is willing to be able to give them an opportunity to tell their story, because every person's story is unique, and to be able to explore every single region and part of the world is the main goal, going internationally eventually. But with all that, I want to go ahead and say thank you Abdullah for being the guest in the podcast in this very, very special episode of the Enigma sessions, and thank you for being one of the first live in-person recording sessions for me. It's one of those things I want to definitely do more in the future if able to. And we'll extend the invitation out to you if you want to come back to a future episode. Maybe have a little bit more relaxed take on a couple perspectives of popular culture, music, or whatever.
It would be an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, well, there we go. All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close it off. This has been the ESL Sessions Enigma with Abdullah. Thank you very much.
Of course. Anytime.